Okay, Representative Carter. House Bill 483. The table is yours, sir.
Thank you. Mr. DePlessis. Good morning, members. I bring to you House Bill 483 this morning. This is red flags gun legislation, and I brought similar legislation last year. And since bringing the legislation last year, I want to tell you what I've done. I went back and I listened to the hearing on the committee last year and all the thoughts and the comments and the great discussion that we had. I also listened to the opposition. And then I went and I listened to law enforcement, because this is intended to be a law enforcement bill. And I listened to law enforcement, I listened to the thoughts, the comments of the NRA and members of this committee, and I bring this legislation this year in a posture that I believe can pass this body. And let me take you through it, and we have some amendments, but first let me walk you through the legislation and hope we can come to an agreement that this is something that is urgently needed in the state of Louisiana. This is red flags legislation. What it's intended to do is to allow a district attorney to petition a court with evidence, with probable cause showing that a person is a risk of imminent personal injury to himself or to another person, that that person owns and possesses one or more firearms, that the firearms are either within a specific place or thing. And then that the district attorney may petition the court, who may issue a warrant that would allow that person to no longer be able to prohibit that person from possessing a gun. We have included every safety measure, every due process proceeding in here. If you look at the language in and of itself, it requires a finding of clear and convincing evidence. Of course, the burden is on the state. And of course, we have every due process procedure in place to allow the person who is found to be a danger to himself or others to be able to petition the court back, saying in order to have a return of his weapons. So I gladly answer any questions that you all may have. This legislation is urgent. I brought it last year because I was sitting in a court. I was at Rule Day in New Orleans. It was civil district court, and I got an alert on my phone. And the alert was for one of my kids' school that there was an active incident pursuing at the school, or whatever language that they used. And when I received that alert, it just, your mind goes to a terrible place in terms of what could be happening at your kid's school. And I have to admit, we always watch tragedies on news, and we always see the nightly news or whatever's on the internet, and you see whatever tragedies transpiring. But during Hurricane Katrina, when I saw the news and it covered my city, that's when it dawned on me that these things are real, and it can really happen to us, and it happens too often. It's hard to go a year or many months without seeing another tragedy, another terrible gun incident. And I'm a big supporter of the Second Amendment. We went out, just members of the legislature, some members of this committee was there, and actively, used our Second Amendment rights. And I'm not doing anything here to try to water them down as much as protect the public from those who are at risk of danger to themselves and others. And I'll gladly answer any questions this committee may have.
Representative Marcel for a question. 3 minutes.
Thank you, Representative Carter, for bringing this bill. I think it's much needed. I heard you say that it has to be initiated by the district attorneys. Is that right?
That is correct. And I believe I have some amendments I worked on as well. But if you look at on page 2, beginning on line 2, yes, upon petition of a district attorney.
And so if someone has knowledge that a person is mentally unstable and have weapons, how would they proceed to get that information to the district attorney?
To contact law enforcement. Contact law enforcement with evidence that the person is, and here are the 3 categories. The person is a risk of imminent personal injury to himself or others, own and possess a firearm, and we know where the firearms are.
Okay. And if we don't know where they are,
Well, that would be one of the responsibilities of law
or
enforcement.
to find out where that weapon
investigate.
is. Oh, okay. Well, I like you, Bill. I think this is a proactive bill. We don't need to wait until we have something like this to one of the mass killings that we see going on at the schools, when someone has reported that the person is an imminent danger, a possible imminent danger. I think anything that we do in order to protect our children from harm, and people at our workplaces as well. This is happening too frequently at our workplaces, when people could have contacted a law enforcement and they could have contacted the DA, but there's no mechanism right now by which we do that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so this just sets the framework for someone to be able to contact the law enforcement. That information is given to the DA, and then the DA at that point, they contact that individual to protect the public. This is a public safety bill. Is that correct?
That's correct. And it gives law enforcement an extra tool in that tool chest.
An extra tool.
Yes.
Right. And this is only for 1 year.
Yes.
So it's not a violation of anybody's First Amendment rights. Is that right?
It would be the Second Amendment.
I mean, the Second Amendment.
And this is not. It has
I'm
been
still
passed
I'm still asleep. I'm
it
sorry.
has been passed in
Freedom
other-
of speech and the bear arms, both of them.
Got about 30 seconds.
Yes,
Okay.
this passes constitutional muster.
Thank you
Representative
very much.
Marcel.
And at the proper time, I'd like to move favorably.
Representative Marcel, the member has some amendments that he would like to offer to get the bill.
With
to
the
process.
amendments, whenever
Would
he
you-
asks the amendments.
Would you like to offer the amendments?
I'll offer the amendments as well.
Let's
Thank
have
you.
Ms. Fogum explain the amendments.
Thank you.
Okay, this set is set number 1886. And what it does is it removes from proposed law the authority by which two peace officers may petition the court for the issuance of a warrant authorizing the search and seizure of firearms.
And if I can explain this amendment, what it does is the way the bill was originally drafted, either a district attorney or two or more police officers could petition the district court. This sets up the framework. That's how it typically works, and that is law enforcement presents their evidence, presents their investigation to the district attorney, and the district attorney petitions the court. So after meeting with law enforcement and hearing some of their concerns, one of the concerns was the procedure, and so this deals with that. And I gladly answer any questions regarding this amendment.
Representative Marcel has offered the amendment. Is there any opposition to the bill being amended? With there no opposition, the Representative Marcel's amendment is on. I believe there's a second amendment that's offered by Representative Marcel. Ms. Fogelman, you want to explain that?
This set is number 1881. And what it does is it authorizes the court to order that the person be taken into protective custody and transported to a treatment facility for immediate examination, instead of requiring the court to provide notice to the Louisiana Department of Health to take action that it deems appropriate and necessary.
Why don't you hit that for about 30 seconds, Representative Carter?
We had a mechanism in here that if the court issues an order prohibiting a person from possessing a gun, that notice shall be sent to the Louisiana Department of Health. And so this corrects where exactly that notice will go. This was intended for it to go to Louisiana Department of Health, Office of Behavioral Health, and this clarifies after listening to the Department of Health's concerns about where in particular that notice should be sent. I gladly answer any questions regarding that one.
Representative Marcel's offered the amendment. Is there any opposition to the amendment? With there being no opposition, the bill is amended. There are no more questions in the queue. We do have cards in support, and I believe two ladies that wish to speak. Miss Angel Bradford. Miss Bradford, are you here? Yes, ma'am. And you're with Mom's Demand for Action. And we have Miss Stephanie Atkinson. Ma'am, would you like to speak?
Instead of Stephanie, Nanette wants to speak. Is that okay? She's
Yeah,
filling out a card.
I'll mark her card for her that she's going to speak. All right, Miss Nanette, is it Olivier?
That's correct.
Okay, Miss Olivia, you want to come up? And then I'm going to go ahead and read. We have Sally Alvarez, Moms Demand Action. Aaron Steer, Executive Director, National Association of Social Workers. Carrie Koch, Chief of Police Association. Carrie Koch, Chief of Police Association. Justin DeWitt. Jennifer Harding, Progressive Social Network. Charles Stevens, Louisiana for Progress. Fabian Blanche, Executive Director, Louisiana Chief of Police Association. Claire Atlan, Moms Demand Action. Yvonne Holmes, Mom Demand Action. Ryan Haney, Haney and Associates, Kevin Hayes, representing the Chief of Police. Amy Sidris, Mom Demands Actions, and Ryan Shaw, Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. And so I believe we have Miss Angel Bradford, 3 minutes.
Okay. One of our survivors was coming from Lafayette, but her mom's in the hospital, so I'm reading her testimony. Her name is Heather Carroll. She's, so I'll just read it as if I'm her. So, my name is Heather Carroll. I've never spoken publicly about this before, so please forgive my nervousness. I'm a mass shooting survivor. I work at the Grand Theater in Lafayette. On July 23rd, 2015, I was watching a movie with two of my friends when a shooter opened fire on the crowd. He killed 2 innocent people and shot 9 others, including my friend. It's the day I became a different person. July 22nd, Heather was outgoing, adventurous, ambitious, and confident. July 24th, Heather is angry, scared, dealing with PTSD, jaded, anxious, and depressed. The shooter tried to get a concealed carry permit in Georgia and couldn't because of his record, which included domestic abuse and a restraining order. He then traveled to Alabama and was able to purchase a weapon. All of this with the intent to harm people. He then came here to our state, Louisiana, and unleashed his hell. He has changed Lafayette forever. He has scarred the state. If he would not have been allowed to purchase a gun or had it temporarily removed because someone alerted law enforcement about his history of warning signs, I wouldn't have had to witness Macy Bro be murdered. I wouldn't have had to watch people run for their lives. My friend wouldn't have been shot. I wouldn't have had to throw 7 employees in my car and tell them to drive to safety. I wouldn't walk with a limp every day from injuring my knee that night. I wouldn't have PTSD. I wouldn't have to deal with this kind of depression. I wouldn't be reminded every single day that this kind of thing happened and could happen again. I would be able to live a normal life. If the red flag bill became law, it could prevent people like him from obtaining a gun to cause harm to others by allowing people like law enforcement and district attorneys to petition to remove guns from dangerous situations. There are plenty of warning signs: an arrest for arson, threat against his own family, multiple interactions with police. But there was no red flag law that so clearly could have helped. So, because of him, I live in a constant state of vigilance. So do a lot of people in the city of Lafayette. We are constantly asked what we are going to do to keep people safe at the theater. The public asks us about security. I always tell them that they should vote for common sense gun law candidates. I hope I can count on you to vote yes on HB 483 and pass a much needed red flag bill in Louisiana.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good morning. My name is Nanette Olivier, and I live here in Louisiana with my family. I'm a volunteer with the Louisiana chapter of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. We are here today to ask you to support House Bill 483, a bill that would help reduce suicides and mass shootings by creating a way for law enforcement and prosecutors to prevent access to guns when a person poses a serious threat to themselves or others. When a person who possesses firearms is in crisis, law enforcement is often the first to see the signs, either through direct contact with the person or because their family members reach out for help. Unless the person is legally prohibited from possessing firearms as a result of a felony conviction or court determination that the person has a serious mental illness, law enforcement often has no authority to intervene. House Bill 483 would help law enforcement and prosecutors by allowing them to seek an order from a court to temporarily remove firearms from dangerous situations. The bill also respects due process, requiring a hearing to take place shortly after a firearm is removed, and includes processes to ensure that the order only lasts as long as the person poses a serious threat. Red flag laws have a broad support and are supported by lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. Bipartisan members of the U.S. House and Senate have supported red flag bills on the federal level, including Senator Lindsey Graham. Red flag laws were also endorsed by the Federal Commission on School Safety, which was formed by the Trump administration after the shooting at Parkland. These laws are also increasingly common. 15 states have passed red flag laws, including Colorado just last month. 5 of those laws were signed by Republican governors. Red flag laws like House Bill 483 help prevent firearms suicide. Between 2013 and 17, nearly 3,400 Louisianans died by suicide. 65% of these deaths were carried out with a gun. On average, 1 Louisiana resident dies by firearm suicide every 20 hours. Research into states that have enacted red flag laws has found that the laws are associated with a reduction in the state's firearm suicide rates.
About 30 seconds, ma'am.
When a person is in crisis, access to a firearm can be the difference between life and death, both for themselves and for those around them. Red flag laws give law enforcement and district attorneys a chance to de-escalate dangerous situations and get people the help they need without the threat of a firearm. We urge you to take this step to protect the people of Louisiana and support House Bill 483. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. There are no questions in the queue for this panel, so let's hear it from the opposition. We have Barrett Kendrick, Louisiana Shooting Association. Mr. Kendrick, are you here? Okay. We have Joshua Barnhill from Gun Owners of America. Mr. Barnhill. And we have Aaron Looper from the NRA. And we're going to let Ms. Looper, ladies go first.
Thank you.
Ms. Looper, 3 minutes.
Aaron Looper at the NRA. So the amendments brought by the sponsors do actually appease a few of our concerns with the bill. However, there still are a few others that we do as far as due process is concerned. The first is going to be the seizure of the firearms in an ex parte proceeding before somebody has actually had a chance to have the full hearing, show up and present their own evidence to a judge. The second part of it is what the language from the search and seizure section of code. So normally to have probable cause to get a warrant, you would have to prove that a crime has been committed or is ongoing. However, this changes that, so the person only has to they pose a risk to themselves or others, owns or possesses one or more firearms, or the firearms are within upon the person or where they are. So our concern is that this could potentially be abused when the probable cause to get a search warrant in the search and seizure part of the section of code, when that standard could maybe not be obtained, that this could be right for abuse. Other thing is with the seizure of the firearms on an ex parte basis, there's other things that we have in code that we've worked with on in past years about third party transfer of those firearms instead of seizure. And then there's an entire section of code that I know Representative Moreno is also working on this year to clean up as well, that would provide the process for how those firearms would be stored by law enforcement, transferred to a third party, or returned if the protective order or extreme risk protective order was terminated. So those are major issues with the bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Looper. Mr. Kendrick?
Yes, sir.
3 minutes.
Mr. Kendrick, Barrett Kendrick, I represent Louisiana Shooting Association. Thank you all for allowing me the time this morning. I am in the firearms training business, so I'm very aware, very in tune to the victims of the crimes that have been mentioned, by different people today. My concern is the robbery of due process. But Mr. Carter brought up that this really starts with a district attorney petitioning the courts, but it really doesn't. It starts with a simple threat, or it starts with someone who made the that pointed out someone that may or may not have made a threat, being that an alleged threat. Unfortunately, people do lie. People do get mad at other people, and they do lie. But not only that, sometimes things get exaggerated. If y'all remember things like the telephone game, where when somebody says something, somebody else tells somebody something else, and eventually it kind of comes back around to be a very exaggerated and drawn out story. Based on something like this alone, that could end up causing the law enforcement to go to the district attorney to petition the courts to take away somebody's right to a firearm. And it's just that, it's a right, it's not a privilege. It does rob due process because it starts with the seizure and the search of that firearm to start with, where law enforcement shows up to someone's house to where they are allowed to search based on that warrant to remove the firearm from their possession. So it's taking that right away. It's taking somebody's right away to be able to defend themselves with that firearm, but it's taking the constitutional right away. And from there, they have to be able to afford to fight that petition. They have to be able to afford to go to the courts to hire somebody. And let's face it, not everybody can afford that, and it puts a significant financial burden on them. And when does it stop? It's for a period of a year, but the same process that brought it on to start with continues on. So if law enforcement wants to continue to take away that right from that individual, all they have to do is go back and start the same process that they did again. So now, how long does somebody have that right that they've been removed from them? So I'm asking you today to please vote against that.
Thank you, Mr. Kendrick. Mr. Barnhill?
Josh Barnhill, here speaking on behalf of Gun Owners of America. I guess I won't have too much to say after Mr. Barrett and Ms. Looper. They echo our same concerns and due process. Potential that this bill shows Second, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, and even potentially First Amendment concerns. And Mr. Barrett said everything very well, so I will just leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barnhill. Okay, if we could yield the table to Mr. Everett, is it Bodian? Yes, sir. Firearms Professional Louisiana, and Miss Judy Newman, Home Defense Foundation. Miss Newman? Is Miss Newman here? Yes. Okay, all right. And then Dan Zelinka. Dan, you want to come up? Okay. Miss Newman, we're going to do ladies first. You're going to be fine.
Good morning. I'm Judy Newman. I'm a member of the Home Defense Foundation. My concern is due process and the fact that somebody would have his word against mine. There are already laws in place that would handle many of the problems that are presented in this bill. And I'm concerned that somebody who is more politically connected to the legal system or to the police that would come to my house, that they would be able to take my guns, if I had them, without due process. The chance to reply in the due process for the bill is after my possessions, my firearms, have been taken. I'm concerned that after the firearms are taken, would they come for my other weapons, the scythe, the sickle, the baseball bat that I have? This bill purports that I would be guilty until proven innocent, and that's not part of our legal system as it stands.
Is that it?
That's it.
Hey, you're under your 3 minutes. Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Bodin. Thank you, man, for coming to the Capitol.
Thank you, Representative. My name is Everett Bodian. I'm here again today speaking on behalf of the Firearm Professionals of Louisiana. We represent the over 2,000 firearm instructors, firearm retailers, gunsmiths, and other firearm professionals working in the state of Louisiana in all corners of our great state. Really, a lot of important things have already been said, but there are still a lot of concerns that I have about this bill specifically. I do commend Representative Carter for trying to put due process concerns to rest with a bill like this. But unfortunately, it can be seen from the text of the bill that the more you attempt to address the due process concerns, you start to really water down the purpose of the bill in the first place, which shows and really underscores the problems with this type of legislation throughout America. There are two main issues with this bill. Primarily, you've got the threats against others and the threats against oneself, and I think these need to be addressed separately. The due process concerns with someone who has made threats against others, and this bill does attempt to address those, but to borrow a talking point that I'm surprised I didn't hear from the NRA today, I think we could accomplish a lot of these same ends by simply enforcing the laws we already have on the books. The bill lists recent threats or acts of violence directed toward other persons as the basis for that probable cause determination, but then it lists out what those things are. And all of them, to my view, appear to already be criminal acts. Threatening people with guns, using or attempted to use physical force against other persons, or being an illegal user of controlled dangerous substances, which already prohibits someone from lawfully owning a gun. I don't see why, if there is probable cause to issue a warrant to take someone's guns for those grounds, there isn't probable cause to issue a warrant to arrest a person for a crime based on existing law. So I think that's a pretty major and pretty clear concern that I think we all have with this bill right here. But the second thing that I don't think has been addressed well enough is the issue of people who are threats to themselves. I think bills like this are well-intentioned, but I think they unfortunately continue to perpetuate a stigma against mental health problems in America. Someone can be punished for being mentally ill with a bill like this. They can have their possessions taken away from them, potentially in perpetuity, without being convicted of any crime, simply for being determined by a court, which is not a healthcare professional, that they have a mental health problem. And I don't see how that is very helpful to someone dealing with a mental health issue, to seize their stuff, not allow them a very good procedure, something that will cost them their own money in order to resist. And especially in the case of people who may actually need treatment, Louisiana has kind of a woeful lack of options for people with mental health problems. And I'm specifically concerned about veterans who may be both suffering from PTSD after tours of duty, but who also cherish their gun rights, who may have their guns taken away with this lack of due process that we've got.
20 seconds.
And I don't see how that's going to help their mental state. I do think it's unfair to people who might otherwise seek treatment for mental health issues if they have concerns about their property being seized from them. So,
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Representative Moreno, was your question for this gentleman? Yes. Okay. You have a question, sir?
will you take
You take a question?
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
okay.
So, you're a member of the Firearm Professionals of Louisiana.
Yes,
That's
sir.
who you represent.
Yes, sir.
So, did you have anything to do with the letter that was sent to me to hand delivered to my office? Did you read or write that letter?
I did not.
Okay, you aware of it?
Not with
Okay.
that level of detail, unfortunately.
All right. Well, I mean, just to clear the air here, let you know what I actually don't disagree with your position on this bill, but apparently I have on others. Your organization hand delivered a letter to my office saying, "Dear Representative Marino, many folks will be watching your vote on HB 235 and 281 when they come to the floor of the legislature. Firearm professionals want these gun bills, and I strongly urge you to not vote against these bills. Abstain if you must, but voting against them would be a big mistake." So you didn't have anything to do with that?
I did not draft that letter, no.
Yeah. See, my job as a representative is to go over bills and ideas and debate. And I would suggest whoever in your organization wrote the letter, you may want to advise them that if you want to send me information about why, that's like you're saying, and reason, please do, but don't waste your time anymore with these letters, because it's not stopping me from objecting to these bills on the floor later today. Let's go back to this bill. You didn't mention the coroner's commitment. I mean, that there is a remedy right now if someone poses an imminent risk to themselves or to others. There's a coroner's commitment that law enforcement has that can come in and basically take custody of someone.
That is true.
And that would be somebody maybe with mental illness, or maybe who's someone. And I think what the bill is saying, that the criteria to go in and take the guns is the same criteria to use to take someone into custody to prevent them from harming themselves or others. Imminent risk. That's my understanding, and I also agree with your other point as well about that if you have committed a crime or a valid threat, you can be arrested. A court can issue a restraining order against you for the person that you're threatening, and then the other bill that I'm working on, which is the gun transfer bill, can kick in, and you can be the guns can be taken from you in that order, but not taken first and go to court. So I just wanted to put that out there with this, so hopefully you don't send any more of these letters to any of my colleagues either, because I don't think that that's what we're here to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Moreno. Representative Gaines, your question for this gentleman?
Yes, it is.
Yes, sir. Okay. Representative Gaines.
Yeah, I understand you are not familiar with the specifics of that letter, but let me ask you this. Does your organization endorse or employ the practice of sending letters to elected officials or legislators beyond information purposes, offering coercion, threats to their position on a bill?
Our organization is made up solely of volunteers. As such, any volunteer member of the organization may or may not send letters or any communication that they see fit to be persuasive. We don't really have a centralized organization or decision-making board. Again, we are simply an organization of volunteers. We don't accept any money. We don't spend any money. We just donate our time as individuals to come together, wear purple shirts, and do what we think is right in front of the legislature. So,
given that you are aware of volunteers in your organization employing that practice, or you're not?
yes, I am aware
All right,
that volunteers send letters to legislature.
Okay. Representative James, your question for this gentleman?
Do you have an issue with that letter? You don't seem to be taking it serious. You have an issue. You support the wording in that letter that my colleague read?
I think that we are getting woefully off topic for what the body.
I
is
asked the
today.
questions. You answered them.
Certainly.
Well, this gentleman's getting beat up pretty bad, but go ahead,
I think he invited it.
Go ahead,
the way his organization sent a letter to our colleague, and I'm asking a simple question: do you support? You say you didn't know about it. You represent the organization that now you say is not really an organization. Do you support the wording in the letter that was sent to my colleague?
I think this is awful similar to our concerns about how these red flag hearings might go down, but I do feel like the body is making a mountain out of a molehill with the language of a one-paragraph letter. I believe the language read on the floor was it would be a big mistake to oppose or support these bills. I would read that as a political mistake, not as something that had an implicit threat. But I think we can see now just how confusing things like this can be. And if someone were coming to seize someone's firearms based on having sent one letter, would that constitute probable cause for then a search warrant with armed officers to raid their house? These are exactly the kind of concerns about how things can be dangerously misconstrued.
So you support it. Thank you.
Sure, if that's how you want to take that.
All right, Representative. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Representative. I cut you.
No, I was just letting him know to make sure that they don't send it in my office. Thank you.
Okay, Representative. Oh, Mr. Zelenka.
Yes.
3 minutes.
Dan Zelenka with Louisiana Shooting Association. I think that pretty much everything's been covered. I wanted just to kind of sum up that this bill has the same problems it did last year. It fails to provide due process, and I think the ex parte nature of the proposed law is a fatal flaw. It was correctly pointed out that existing criminal law and the existing coroner's law can take care of these issues. We don't need a new bill. It was also correctly pointed out that this could be abused by law enforcement or by people seeking to settle a score with someone. It seeks to take property from people who have not been convicted of a crime, have not even been accused of a crime, but for something they may do in the future. I don't know how you can do that. And two other issues. One, it does take clear and convincing evidence to get an extreme risk protective order. However, if the person against whom the order is issued wants to remove it before the first year, that person now has to come in and prove that they're not a risk by clear and convincing evidence. It would be better if the state had to maintain in any challenge to the currentness of the risk, would have to maintain that standard of clear and convincing evidence. I don't think that the person who is in essence the victim in this case should have to come in and prove by clear and convincing evidence. And finally, firearms are very valuable personal property. There are no protections in the bill for damages due to the negligence of the seizing authority. I remember 2 weeks ago, California seized some 1,000 firearms from someone. They accused him of dealing without a license, and they piled them all up in the driveway for a photo op. I saw some close-ups of that. There were some extremely collectible firearms in there, and there's just no protection for people in this bill. And that's really it. Please vote against it.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Okay, we have Mr. Michael Helms. Mr. Helms, you here? Come on up, sir. We also have Bryant Gilliott. Do you wish to speak, Mr. Gilliott? No, you're good? Okay. And Miss Megan Garvey, LACDL. Would you wish to speak, ma'am? Yes, sir. Okay, come on up. And we're going to do ladies first.
Thank you.
Ma'am, you filled out a red card. Are you for the bill or against it?
Against it.
You're against the bill. Okay, all right.
Let me make sure that I have the right bill, but yeah, I believe so.
This is Representative Carter's bill. I see the organization. I'm just okay. All right.
The bill that allows for the warrantless search after a showing of certain quote unquote red flags, as it were, correct?
The red flag would be to seize your guns. That's correct.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
all right.
I am against it.
You're against the bill? Okay,
My name
ladies
is
first.
Megan Garvey, and I am here on behalf of LACDL. And I just want to point out, first of all, and I believe, I came in late, but I believe some other testimony touched upon this, so I'll try to be brief on this point. But this bill is a clear violation of the Second Amendment. It permits the police to lawfully seize guns from people's homes without a warrant, and there's no requirement that there be any connection between an alleged crime and that seizure at all, which is in clear violation of our state constitution, Article 1, Section 2, and also the Second Amendment of the United States. There's no clear compelling government interest and no narrowly tailored restriction to get around the requirements of both our state constitution and the United States Constitution's Second Amendment. Beyond that, I would point out that there is also a serious Fourth Amendment issue, which I hope should be obvious to all concerned, but that the warrantless search of a home is a clear violation of a Fourth Amendment, and this does not meet the probable cause requirement to be able to do that. This does not meet any of the exigencies that would be required normally to search someone's home, his castle, without a warrant. There's no probable cause needed for a crime whatsoever. And beyond that, 483 is very overbroad. It is not narrowly tailored to meet any of the various exceptions. But I would also like to point out something else that I personally noticed about this bill, which is I think that the fact that this bill triggers a taking away of fundamental rights granted by the Bill of Rights to people who have had, who either sought mental health treatment or sought substance abuse treatment, I think that it discourages people from seeking those kinds of treatment. I think that we already have a stigma in our society for reaching out for help. I think that stigma is often higher among men. And I think that the thought that by seeking help, you could open yourself up to having your Second and Fourth Amendment and other constitutional rights be lessened compared to another citizen, I think that's going to dissuade people from taking care of themselves. And I think it's not going to make us safer. I think it's going to make us less safe. So I would ask that you vote no on this bill.
Okay, thank you very much. And then Mr. Helms?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, representatives. Mark Twain once said that no man's life, liberty, or property are safe when the legislature is in session. How true. My name is Michael Helms. I'm a resident of Baton Rouge. I'm a taxpayer, I'm a voter, and I'm a federally licensed gun collector. It's interesting that we're discussing this in the administration of criminal justice. Once again, gun owners that have been charged with no crime, that are convicted of no crime, are being treated like criminals. Thank you. House Bill 483 raises a kind of question about the kind of state that we want to be. 3 years ago, this city wrestled with the idea of restraint when one of our own citizens, Alton Sterling, was killed by police officers. Killed without trial, killed without due process. And with the passage of red flag bills like this, we tell our judiciary and our law enforcement officers that it's okay to ignore the Fifth and Sixth Amendments. It would legitimize this sort of behavior under color of law. Act now, think later. And this isn't just hypothetical. In Maryland, Gary Willis was killed by police officers serving just such an order. No charge, no conviction, no trial. As a citizen of Louisiana, I'd like to think that we in the Sportsman Paradise hold ourselves to a higher standard than that. If this conversation was genuinely about safety, we'd be talking about bolstering our impoverished mental health services. We'd be talking about the serious issues of homelessness, substance abuse, and systemic poverty, none of which is covered in this bill. But confiscating private property without due process, that solves nothing. We put private citizens and we put our law enforcement officers at tremendous risk. And the worst part is we leave genuinely at-risk people flapping in the wind. Many of you claim it's the job of government to protect people, keep us safe. And if you really believe that, then you must oppose this bill vigorously. Or, of course, you can tell voters in the upcoming election that the bedrock values of American jurisprudence don't really mean anything to you. I look forward to seeing which side you're on. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman.
I like the first one first. So, we'll see. All right, thank you, sir. Welcome to the Capitol. Don, is it Carmadale? Mr. Carmadale, come on up. Okay, Mr. Carmadale, 3 minutes.
My name is Don Carmadale. I just wanted to say that I'm against the red flag bill, and I want to make a proposal to all the representatives who are going to vote for the red flag bill that if you vote for it, I will consider that kind of loony, and I'm going to put your name up as somebody who should have your guns confiscated. So thank you very much.
Just don't threaten anybody. Okay, we appreciate
No,
you.
I'm just
We appreciate your passion.
report them as,
Thank you very much.
not right. So
Thank you very much.
and report them to the people that they're going to report the citizens and have their due processes confiscated. So,
Also filling
thank
out
you.
cards. Thank you. Also filling out cards in opposition is Gordon Hutchison, Louisiana Shooting Association. Stephen Biggs, representing himself. Sirius Anderson, HDF. Ronald Seven, HDF. Lee Tucker, HDF. Is it Lydia? Draganis, okay. Home Defense Foundation. Louis Coletti, HDF. Patricia Scudera, Home Defense Foundation. Lee Shaw, Home Defense Foundation. Michael Simmerall, Home Defense Foundation. John Stump, Home Defense Foundation. Nina Rowland, Home Defense Foundation. Mary Sue Giroux, Home Defense Foundation. Colleen Wood, Home Defense Foundation. Carol and Roy Zania, Home Defense Foundation. Charles McGrath, Home Defense Foundation. Noel Cusinamo, FP of New Orleans, Louisiana. Louis DeRis, Firearms Professionals, Louisiana. Chris Petron, Firearms Professionals, Louisiana. Penny Petron, Firearms Professionals, Louisiana. John Hendricks, Firearm Professionals, Louisiana. James Lacasanga, okay, Firearms Professionals, Louisiana. Paul Argosino, LSA, and Alexander Argosino. Okay.
I can excuse yourself.
Representative Carter, you had some late cards in support that wish to speak. Clarence, is it Gallegos? Mr. Gallegos, are you here? Or Miss Gallegos. I'm sorry, Clarice Gallegos. I messed that up bad, didn't I?
That's okay. I've
Okay.
been called Clarence before. You're not the first.
All right. And then we have Catherine Joshua.
You okay?
Catherine, are you here? Or Caitlin?
Kayla's my sister. She's stepped out, so.
Okay, all right. Well, she's supporting, or not, she's supporting this bill. And so, all right, Clarice, Miss Clarice, 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name's Clarice Gallegos. And as a domestic violence survivor, I am very much in support of this bill. I've had guns pulled on me in violent fights. Thank God no one shot them, but it is very scary. I had a shotgun pulled on me with my 1-year-old son laying in the same bedroom as the fight was taking place. So it is important that guns are taken away from people that have a violent tendency, and restraining orders don't always work. There are many women that are shot after filing a restraining order, and that kind of defeats the purpose of the restraining order. So if their guns were held until at least the anger passed, I think that would be very, very, very important. And as a supporter of mental health, I'm in the process of opening a clubhouse in Lafayette, Louisiana for mental health, for adults living with mental health. First place, if the gun was legally obtained, mental health people aren't even allowed to buy a purchase. If a good background check was done on them, they're not even allowed to purchase a gun. So, and there are so many people suffering from mental health in our prisons right now and not getting treatment like they deserve or need. It's a shame. So I really didn't prepare a speech because I wasn't planning on speaking, but with all the opposition against this bill, I just had to. So I definitely support this bill, and thank you for your time.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can address some of the comments I've heard from the opposition.
I'm going to let you do it. Let me read your cards in support so I can finish the record. Rebecca Borg filled out a card in support, even though late. Darren Bouder, representing himself. Keith, is it Lederman? Kinsley House, Johnny Coke, Chief of Police, Charmaine Cassiopa, United Way, Kim Sport, United Way, and Pamela Allison, United Way of Southeast Louisiana. There is a card filled out by Angel Bradford for informational purposes, but I know that Representative Duplessis' question is for the author, and I believe Representative Moreno, who's got a little time left, is for the author. So if someone needs you, I'll call you up. Okay, you want to take these questions before you close? Or you want to... Why don't you take the questions and I'll let you clear up your points. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Representative Duplessis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Representative Carter, you were probably planning to hit some of the points in your closing regarding the questions that I'm going to ask. And forgive me because I had another bill in committee that I had to present when you opened, so you may have already touched this, so if I ask you a question that's repetitive, forgive me. But first I want to thank you for bringing this legislation, and I know this isn't the first time that you've tried to bring it. You've worked on it to try to improve it so that it could meet all of the marks and try to please all sides, which is obviously a very difficult thing to do. But in your studies and in your research, talk about the other states that have passed similar legislation and any statistical information that you have in terms of the impact that other legislation has had in other states in terms of achieving what you're trying to achieve.
15 states have passed what it is that we're attempting to pass here. 10 states have passed this legislation since the Parkland shooting, and other states have them teed up. Of those 10 states that just recently passed it, 5 of those laws were signed by Republican governors. It passes bipartisan appeal. Lindsey Graham is in support of it, in main part because it's a law enforcement bill. This is a bill, I'm looking at Representative Pylan, Frankie Howard, Representative Bacala. This is a tool in their tool chest that allow them to go out and seek assistance from a district attorney to get a warrant.
And has there been any improvements in terms of the issues that we're trying to address of people harming themselves? Are these guns being just taken out of the possession temporarily of people who are a threat to themselves?
Absolutely.
I guess my last question is for the gun rights advocates, organizations like the NRA and others who've testified today, have they ever been in support of any legislation like this? Not saying your exact bill, but bills like the ones that you're presenting today. Have they ever been in support of anything like this?
They have. The NRA has been very supportive of this sort of legislation. They have. They issued a statement. The NRA's chief lobbyist said this can help prevent violent behavior before it becomes a tragedy, which is the whole goal of this. I'm confused, quite honestly, because I've tried to follow the NRA's position on each of these bills, and it seems as if their position changes depending on the particular legislature they're before. If they're before an extremely conservative one, they take a hardline position. If they look like the legislation is going to pass, they take a different position. I've tried to capture every amendment they offered, every opportunity, every thought to kind of get into this bill. And I heard the testimony today, and there was concern about third-party transfers. Well, that's an easy remedy because there was legislation passed by Senator J.P. Morrell that had a third-party procedure mechanism, and we can copy that and resolve those issues. I'm more than willing to sit down and talk to anyone to pass comprehensive legislation here. And I've listened to their concerns, not just before the Louisiana legislature, but their concerns across the state. And I tried to remedy their concerns with this legislation.
Thank you, Representative Carter.
Thank you, Representative Duplessis. Representative Moreno, you've got about 2 minutes left in 3.
I'll try to be one.
Sure.
The concerns that I have are the same with the due process part of it, actually. Are you familiar with the coroner statute that allows it seems like it overlaps entirely on what you're doing, because if you have to show an imminent risk, it says that the district attorney has to petition the court, and they shall not do so unless they've conducted an independent investigation and have determined that probable cause set forth exists, that there's no reasonable alternative available to prevent the person from causing imminent personal injury to himself or others. In the coroner statute, which is RS 28:53.2, officer may issue an order of protective custody upon request of a credible person who has witnessed the subject's actions or behavior which indicate that the subject is a danger to themselves or others, and it allows them to take this person into custody. And then there's a series of procedures that go through where they have to be examined, and also the part as well, I believe that existing law covers when you have when a crime has occurred, or they've actually committed a crime, that in these threats, the police can actually arrest you and go through a different procedure to get to the same result.
If I can very, very briefly, and it's hard to get into a deep analysis between the coroner's law and this law in 3 minutes. But one of the things that you see throughout the law is there's this concept of arresting the person. You can seize the person, but you can't arrest the gun. You can't seize the gun. So, for instance, my wife is a psychiatrist in New Orleans. She does emergency psychiatry, so I'm very familiar with this process. And the coroner can come in and issue a 72-hour hold, and then afterwards, the person's free to go. And so one of the things we hear in law enforcement, you tell me if I'm wrong, because I've traveled the state and I've listened to them. And one of the things I hear is during a domestic violence, one of the things I hear of during a domestic abuse arrest, the husband or the boyfriend's being arrested, let out by police, and he turns around to his girlfriend or his spouse and says, "I'm going to kill you when I get out of here." And she goes up to law enforcement and says, "Well, he has guns in the house." Well, they can arrest him for domestic abuse, for beating her up and spousal abuse, but they don't have the authority to go seize those guns. And there may be a cooling off period. He may be held for 48 hours, 72 hours. He's going to be released, have access to those guns, and he's made a credible threat. He's exhibiting a danger, imminent danger to himself or others. And law enforcement has told me, because I asked how often does this happen? It happens way too often, especially in the rural communities, and they carry out those threats. This isn't idle threats where they're saying, "I'm going to kill you when I get out of jail." When they get out of jail, they carry it out. The 72-hour hold, you can seize this person who's displaying mental illness, but they're crazy enough to know what they have to say in order to get released. And when they get released, they have access to guns, and they've been exhibiting signs that they're a danger to themselves or others. The law is set up to arrest the person. This is giving law enforcement an extra tool to go seize the gun. And Representative Moreno, I consider you a friend. I do. they're not trying to bully you. They're trying to bully the 43,000, 44,000 people you represent. I've faced that. I've gotten calls after the Confederate Monument speech, after this red flags. Oh, I've gotten calls all around this state. You can't bully me, though. This is because you're bullying the people I represent. And I applaud you for standing strong on this issue, other issues, and so forth. And I listen to your concerns. One of the concerns, and the chairman shared this concern. Well, what if the gun is owned by someone else? What if it's a father who has a son or someone staying in your house? So we watered it down as best I could. Now, own and possess is in the language, page 2, line 8. That's my effort, my good faith sign that I've listened to all the thoughts around it, all the stakeholders, and tried to come up with a sensible legislation to help us prevent a tragedy. This isn't partisan politics. I don't want a shooting at my daughter's school. You don't want one at yours. I don't want a shooting at a movie theater. Took my family bowling the other night. I don't want an incident, especially when someone has been exhibiting these red flags. This is for law enforcement. Thank you.
Was that you close?
And with that,
I was assuming that was your close.
Favorable passage.
I think Representative Marcel beat you to it. Representative Marcel has made a motion to report the bill favorable as amended. Is there any opposition? Representative Bakla opposes. Ms. Shakespeare will call the roll. A vote yes will be to move the bill forward to the floor as amended. A vote no will be to not. Ms. Shakespeare.
Representative Bakla? No. Representative Bagneris? Yes. Representative Carpenter? Yes. Representative Cruz? No. Representative Duplessis? Yes. Representative Dwight? No. Representative Gaines? Yes. Representative Hodges? No. Representative Howard? No. Representative James? Yes. Representative Marcel? Yes. Representative Marino? No. Representative Moss? No. Representative Mascarello? No. Representative Norton? Yes. Representative Pilot? No. Representative Mack?
No.
No. We have 7 yeas and 10 nays.
Thank you.
Thank you. No. Okay, I know we have a lot of people here with that bill, so if we'll take maybe 30 seconds for you guys to clear out if you want to, and we'll grab to the next bill.